So on this demo, what I want to achieve is this effect here where the building doesn't really have any hard edges at the top and kind of just sits there in the sky, in the atmosphere. And it looks great. It looks very realistic and full of atmosphere. So I'll be concentrating on the tonal values here, and I'll provide the traceable. And I've purposely not outlined the building because if I outline it, where I want the sky to sort of blend into the buildings, the line will cause a problem. But where I have put the hard lines, that's where I will want sharp edges. But that's what I want to create, light. So that's what I'm trying to paint, light, not detail. So the colour of this painting, dead easy. It's blue and grey, browny grey maybe. So it's definitely blue at the top here. I've got some grey in here. If you go into the corners of your well on your palette, you will find you'll end up with some greys. So and what I'm trying to do here is just create some sort of different variations of tone in the sky. So that's by having more water, less pigment, more pigment, etc. And where we've got those real sort of white buildings off there, that's where we need crisp edges. And those other buildings have got kind of a bluiness to them. There's some buildings off in the distance which are just white. But what you have to do on a painting like this is forget detail and just go for abstract shapes. So same here. And that building. White on the top of that building. So this is certainly, I wouldn't say a beginner demo. But give it a go. So that's the sky. But what you need to go straight in now with this yellow ochre, is it? Yellow ochre, a bit of hands of yellow. A grey yellow. So again, just mix it there. So I'm now painting the light values of the buildings. And the sky's still damp. And I want to pull some of that sky into the building because the plan here is to really get this building to look as though it's sat there in real life. So there's actually white on that building, so I shall lighten, take some paint off there, keep it light over this side. That's all going to be shadow there, and I can come down there. So we can just put some of that warmth on the ground. We'll be painting over that at some point. And just water there to lighten the mix, soft edges, and a bit of burnt sienna because we've got wet edges there, or soft edges. So I'm just painting shapes. That's what you've got to be thinking. So we've got dry paper here, so we're going to get hard edges in there. And it's when we get these darks in, that's when this will... I wanted to paint that now because that just disappears into the into there. So a bit of soft wet into wet in there maybe. It's all very abstract, so it is a case of just paint your own shapes. Don't worry about replicating it too much. So I think we can dry that off now. And it's not exactly as it is in the reference, but just accept what it is. It's the only way to paint a scene like this. So hopefully you're enjoying this video. Please do hit that like and subscribe. And don't forget to check out the links in the description if you want to join me on memberships to take your watercolours to the next level. So now we'll be bringing a shadow across, which I'll use cobalt blue, a touch of Lazarine crimson. But we don't want to go too dark, it's quite delicate. So I shall just grey that off, make sure it's quite watery. And you've really got one shot at this, so it is what it is at the end of the day. If it doesn't work, you can always paint it again. So again, don't use a brush that's too small. I'm going to have another brush on the go, which is just the smaller size 10, which if I just take some clean water and just connect that shadow to the sky. And remember the bead, because this shadow needs to be painted all in one go. And so we're starting to create that sense of light. Bring that down, reload the bead. I've got lots in my well here, so it's nicely loaded up. Again, I'm going to take the brush here and just soften that edge there. It disappears into the sky. And across the top of this building, there's a random shape there that goes across. The shadow does change to a more slightly warmer colour. Bring that down. So definitely the bead is what's needed on this scene. So I shall just load that up down here for later. Switch to a slightly smaller brush. This probably just happens to be the right mix over here. Slightly browner. Pull that into there. And that describes the side of that building. Comes down to here. And then we go back to the blue. Or the shadow that falls across here. That goes across there. And the side of that building. Let's add a bit of red. Again, let's just keep it greyed off. Just makes it a little bit more interesting if we have a bit of variation in the colours. So again, you know, I'm lost here with the shapes, so I'm just going to make my own. Connect that to there. Bring that down. And this is all connected via the bead. Side of that building. Shadow there. And it all just looks like abstract shapes, which is what it is. And it won't be until I put some darks in. So it's definitely more blue off in the distance here. And we'll have figures and all sorts on here at some point. So again, it's something off in the distance there. Soft edge. Just a bit of water there, just let it fade away to nothing. Need to finish down here, so just take this brush, paint into that bead. Again, just your own abstract shapes. They don't have to be like the reference there. Slightly stronger pigment in the foreground. And they've got to be fairly quick because I need to be putting the windows in a moment. So soft edge there. So we're just going to leave a little bit of a hard edge in there. Careful dropping lots of water on there like I've just done. So switch to the Escoda Perla, just mop up that because we don't need that much water for anywhere else now. So nice strong dark, so the blue and burnt sienna will do the job. So we have got dry paper here, so that will give me a hard edge, and where it's still damp, there's those windows going in. And notice they're not just perfect squares, they're abstract shapes. It's all about suggestions. You know, take a look at some Seago paintings where he painted in the desert and so on. He painted light. And this image is inspired by some of those series of paintings. But all of this has got to be done wet into wet and quickly. Just abstract shapes. Switching between brown and slightly darker there. So this is a great exercise in learning how to work wet into wet, wet on dry, letting go of detail. Now, until you've let go of detail, I wouldn't even attempt this. If you're still fixated with having it looking perfect, you're not going to be able to paint something like this, because this is all about not being perfect, embracing mistakes, letting things happen. I would quite like that roundness that's in the reference, possibly. Might regret that, but probably best just to leave things alone when they're nearly dry, but that might be quite nice. It was still damp, so I wouldn't have probably attempted that if it was starting to dry too much. So that's why I recommend doing lots and lots of paintings. This is my 5th painting today, because by doing lots of paintings, it doesn't matter if they're not any good, what you're doing is you are learning what happens when you put the brush to the paper, which is what you need to know to be able to paint scenes like this. A few verticals, a bit of architectural detail, something off in the distance, and that's what we're doing. You know, we're just painting a dark, which is in the shadow there, so it's going to be soft. You know, we're not necessarily painting doorways and things. You know, we're just a well-positioned dark. Smaller off in the distance. We'll have some figures as well. There's a bigger shape there, which is supposed to be a doorway. There's a bit of blue shadow separating those buildings. It needs to be done like that, where it's just put in and allowed to do its thing without messing about like I just did there. You'll always regret it. Maybe a little darker in there. Right, that's enough messing about there. We'll be having some figures in there. It has almost dried, so as long as I use paint that's fairly thick, the figures won't melt into the background too much. So for instance, let's just do a little test. So there's his head. It would be quite good to get the figures in on slightly damp paper because they will soften like that. So let's have a go with this. Well, again, this is damp. And I just paint what I see. Sharp, dark edge there, which then goes into a brown there. Slightly lighter this side. And it's all soft in there. And slightly darker at the base. A few directional lines. It's still just damp there. Slightly darker in there. Something there, I don't know what it is. It breaks up that shape slightly. Looking for things to do. That's a good sign to stop doing that. Right. Let's just so the paper's at that awkward stage where it's not quite dry, but it's not damp enough, but it's good and it's bad. It means we can get shapes now that are going to stay. We do run the risk of run backs and things, so these are just lines that just break up the surface a little bit. So let's dry that off. So I just need some figures off in the distance here. So if I keep them steered towards blue, they'll stand, or they'll look further away. So there's 1, 2. And we'll go for a bit of brown as well. Now just using the side of the brush. Crowd people. Let's just dab it with a clean tissue. And then we can just anchor them to the ground. So sunlight looks like it's coming from that direction, maybe, I don't know. So I've achieved the effect I wanted pretty well, I think, that softness, that it's sitting in the space there rather than a building stuck on. So quite pleased at how that came out, and it's not easy to do that, but you need to have a good understanding and control of how damp the paper is, etc. So don't be too hard on yourself if you struggle with it, if you're fairly new to watercolour or even been painting for a few years. It's not easy, but give it a go. It's easy, much easier when you let go of detail and you really sort of come to the understanding that yes, you're just painting light shapes and connection is important, and get that bead going. Without the bead you can't paint this, so it takes many years, I think, to get that in your head and you know, be aware of it to make sure you've got that. But good luck, and I'll see you in the next video. There you go. Hopefully you enjoyed that. Please do hit the like and subscribe. Check out the links in the description and watch this video next if you enjoyed this one, because you're going to love this one.